Hello, I'm Lawrence and welcome back to Ebenezer Cottage Garden. So it's been a funny year for growing tomatoes in the UK. We've had them ripening really slowly, and this year I chose to plant some really big beefsteak and plum tomato varieties that are just taking that little bit longer. But I'm starting to get nice crops through, especially from my Opalka plum tomatoes. And funnily enough, it's actually the cherries that are taking a little bit longer to come through because I had problems with some pests eating the plants early on. So today I just wanted to show you how I like to preserve them. This method, they can store indefinitely, but I try to use them up within a year. So let's get started. So the technique I'm going to be showing you today is how to can or bottle your tomatoes. So you're going to start off by needing some nice freshly picked plum tomatoes. I've got Opalka here, which is a Polish variety, excellent variety for growing here in the UK, especially undercover. And I've also got some San Marzano tomatoes as well, which is a classic Italian variety which guaranteed you've eaten a million times from those cans of tomatoes that you buy. You're also going to need a freshly sterilised jar, a knife and a bowl to put your tomato skins into. So the first step is to get your tomatoes and just make a crisscross in the end, because it's going to make it so much easier to peel the tomatoes, and you'll see why later. So you might have seen videos on YouTube of Italian families gathering round doing huge batches, but I just wanted to show you that you can do this on a small scale with one single jar if you just want to see if the technique's for you and whether the tomatoes that you're growing are going to work well too. So now that we've crisscrossed all of the tomatoes, the next step is just to pour a kettle of boiling water over. This is where it can get a little bit hot and tricky. So now that these have been resting in the boiling water for about a minute, we're ready to peel the tomatoes. You can go ahead and do this without peeling them, but I just think it smartens things up a little bit. So get yourself a spoon and a bowl that you can put the peel in and fish out your first tomato. Let's go with one of these little ones here. So the boiling water has loosened up the skin, and in theory it should come off easily. And here we go. Looks like I'm in. Well, that's my first one, and they look so familiar at this stage because you're so used to seeing them at this point in the tins that you buy in the shops. And all you're going to be doing is one by one loading these up into the jar. You can squish them in if you want, but I like to keep them as whole as possible, just to keep the beauty of the real natural product. So I'm going to carry on, and I'm going to peel all of these and get them into the jar. Oh, look at that. That is coming off so nicely. As you can see, the jar is shaping up nicely with one more tomato left to go in. And I can tell you that if you do this and you keep your tomatoes throughout the year, it's so satisfying cracking open a jar of these in winter and cooking with them. I don't add any salt or anything like that in at this point. I add it all in at the point of cooking, so you've got a bit more control over seasoning the dish. So you might find that when you are cooking with them that you add perhaps a little bit more seasoning than you do with a can of shop bought tomatoes, but the flavour is still just as good, and yeah, you definitely won't complain. So that's my last one in. I'm thinking just to finish these off, we'll get a little sprig of basil in the jar. Now that you've filled your jar with your tomatoes and your basil, you just want to make sure you get a nice tight seal with the lid. You can see now that you've got your jar and you're ready to go. So at this point you need to transfer it into a pan of cold water, and at the base of the pan just make sure you've got something like a tea towel so that the jar itself doesn't come into contact with direct heat. You can then proceed to heat up the water with a medium to high heat and keep it at a rolling boil for 40 minutes to an hour to make sure that the canning process takes place properly. And at that point, you want to leave it in the water to cool for about 24 hours. And when you pull it out, just make sure that you're pushing down on the lid and that you've got a good seal. You'll know this because you won't hear a click. So you're ready to go. You You can store these for a year or two and they're ready to use whenever you want, even on those darkest, coldest days of winter. You've got a nice jar of sunshine ready to go. If you've enjoyed what you've seen today, please do like and subscribe, and I hope to see you next time.